what if the most perilous places aren't on any map? They aren't desolate landscapes or war-torn cities, but territories deep inside your own mind, waiting to trap you. Do you ever feel drained, stuck in a repetitive loop, or perhaps disconnected from who you're supposed to be? Does it feel like an invisible force is holding you back, poisoning your relationships, or keeping you from the life you were meant to live? Carl Jung, one of history's greatest explorers of the human psyche, offered insights that truly help us understand these feelings. His work suggests these are symptoms of being trapped in invisible psychological landscapes. These aren't just bad moods, you see. They are inner environments that can dismantle your individuality, drain your spirit, and ultimately bring your personal growth to a halt. In this video, we'll explore 8 of the most dangerous of these places, psychic territories, in fact, that Jung's work helps us identify as traps for the unwary soul. Recognizing them, you see, is often the very first step toward escaping them. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung dedicated his life to charting the vast, unseen world of the human mind. He believed our greatest battles aren't fought with the outside world, but within the landscapes of our own consciousness. Inside each of us lies a geography of light and shadow, and to become whole, we must become courageous explorers of our own inner terrain. But this exploration isn't without its dangers. Jung's writings warn of certain states of mind, psychic environments that are profoundly hazardous. To live in them, even unconsciously, is to risk losing your sense of self and your connection to life. These aren't abstract ideas. They're the roots of widespread suffering, the anxiety, depression, and deep emptiness that plague so many. As Jung saw it, a neurosis must ultimately be understood as the suffering of a soul that has not yet discovered its meaning. Today we're going to act as cartographers of the soul, using Jung's wisdom to map 8 of these treacherous inner lands. These are the places you need to recognize and avoid setting up camp in. This journey isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Because as Jung taught, you can't change what you don't first make conscious. By bringing these dark places into the light, you reclaim the power to choose your own path and become who you truly are. So the first, and perhaps most terrifying place Jung's work really warns us about, that's the abyss of meaninglessness. This isn't just, having a bad day. No, it's a profound, soul-crushing void where life just feels utterly hollow, and your goals, well, they just seem pointless. And this is arguably the most dangerous psychological place because, as Jung famously stated, and I quote, "Man cannot stand a meaningless life. The human psyche, it can endure almost any hardship if it just has a why. But what it absolutely can't survive is a vacuum of purpose." Being trapped here means just going through the motions, waking up, working, talking to people, but feeling completely detached, like you're watching a movie of your life instead of living it. A deep apathy takes over. Things that once brought joy feel like empty distractions. Ambition dies and relationships feel shallow. You might scroll social media or binge-watch shows, not for fun, but to numb the deafening silence inside. For Jung, this was a modern epidemic. He observed that many of his patients weren't suffering from a definable clinical neurosis, but from the sheer senselessness and aimlessness of their lives. This emptiness, he argued, is a spiritual illness. The way out isn't to run from the emptiness, but to face it. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This means listening to your despair. What is it trying to tell you? This abyss is a call from your soul to find a new, personal meaning, one forged in the fire of your own experience." The journey involves what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self. It means turning inward and exploring your dreams and passions. The abyss feels like an ending, but for Jung, it's an invitation to a new beginning, the dark, fertile ground from which a more meaningful life can grow. The second dangerous place isn't a solitary one. No, it's a shared prison, the mire of symbiotic relationships. Jung's work, you see, warns against what he called pathological bonds. That's where two people become so enmeshed that their boundaries just dissolve. They stop existing as separate selves and instead become psychic extensions of one another. In this swampy terrain, well, personal growth just grinds to a halt as the soul is slowly drained. This is the dynamic, actually, of the psychic vampire, where one person unconsciously feeds on the other's emotional and spiritual energy. Now, if you're the one being drained, you'll feel a constant, nagging exhaustion. After spending time with this person, you feel depleted and somehow smaller. You find, for instance, that you can't make a decision without their approval. And your own desires, well, they just get pushed aside. You're constantly walking on eggshells. Managing their emotions and sacrificing your own needs just to keep the peace. These relationships, they often disguise themselves as intense love, but really they're built on dependency. Now, the vampire, in this dynamic, they aren't necessarily evil, not at all. They're often deeply wounded, you see, lacking their own inner validation. They unconsciously latch onto others to feel whole, using manipulation or guilt, to keep their source of energy close. The Jungian path out of this mire, it's a courageous act of separation and self-reclamation. These toxic bonds, you see, they prevent the most crucial task of life, individuation. Now, the first step is to recognize that your exhaustion isn't a personal failing. No, it's a symptom of a toxic dynamic. The solution, then, is to build and enforce boundaries. This is terrifying, though, because the other person will likely react with anger or even guilt-tripping to pull you back in. Jung's work, it teaches us that this is a necessary battle for your own soul. You have to reclaim your psychic energy by asking yourself, what part of me agreed to this? Often, the person being drained, they play a rescuer role. Jung would argue, you've got to withdraw that projection. You can't save them. No, your primary responsibility is to save yourself. It's painful, yes, but it's the only way back to solid ground. The third dangerous place is one of the most volatile territories within the psyche, the badlands of shadow possession. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is the unconscious part of us holding everything we've repressed or denied, our fears, rage, envy, and greed. Everyone has a shadow, but danger arises when we aren't aware of it. The shadow can then either be projected onto others, or it can hijack our personality in what Jung called shadow possession. Shadow projection means you're constantly at war with the outside world, but the enemy is a disowned part of yourself. You might find certain people irrationally irritating. That arrogant coworker or that manipulative family member triggers a rage in you that feels out of proportion. Jung would say that what infuriates us in others is often a quality we've refused to see in ourselves. Even more dangerous, though, is full-on shadow possession. This is when the shadow's repressed energy overwhelms your conscious personality and takes control. As Jung wrote, a man possessed by his shadow is always standing in his own light and falling into his own traps. This can look like sudden outbursts of rage, bizarre acts of self-sabotage, or giving in to destructive impulses that feel totally alien. You might say, "I just wasn't myself," and Jung would agree. It was the shadow acting through you. The escape from these badlands isn't through fighting the shadow, but through integrating it. Jung taught that the shadow isn't evil. It's just, well, unknown. It even holds positive qualities, like untapped creativity and healthy aggression, qualities that were repressed along with everything else. The goal, you see, is to make the unconscious conscious. And this starts with radical self-honesty. You must find the courage to look at the people who trigger you and really ask yourself, what part of myself am I seeing in them? The next step, it's to consciously engage with your shadow. Maybe through journaling or dream analysis, or even by paying attention to those slips of the tongue. The goal here isn't to get rid of the shadow, no, but to build a relationship with it. By consciously acknowledging and integrating these hidden parts, you take away their power to possess you. You reclaim the immense energy that was trapped in your unconscious. As Jung so wisely put it, the meeting with oneself is first the meeting with one's own shadow. Okay, so our fourth psychological danger zone. It's the labyrinth of compulsive repetition. This is a subtle but maddening place where you find yourself trapped in the same self-defeating loop. It's like dating the same type of person who always breaks your heart. Or maybe ending up in that same kind of soul-crushing job. Or even making the same mistake again and again, even when you swear you'll change. You see, Jung identified this as a trap where we unconsciously recreate painful situations, almost as if we're walking through an invisible maze. Being lost in this labyrinth, it truly feels like fate. You might think you just have bad luck or that the world is simply out to get you. There's a bewildering sense of powerlessness, almost like a character who's forced to repeat the same tragic script. This isn't a lack of willpower, by the way. No, it's actually the result of what Jung called an unconscious complex. What's that, you ask? Well, it's an emotionally charged cluster of thoughts and memories, often from early life, that just operates on its own. For example, an unresolved issue with authority might lead you to repeatedly clash with bosses, no matter where you work. You see, this labyrinth, it's truly built from the bricks of your unhealed past. The Jungian key to escaping, well, it's to realize this pattern isn't a punishment. It's a message. Repetition is the psyche's desperate attempt to get your attention and bring an unresolved issue into the light to be healed. Stop blaming fate and start looking for the pattern. Become a detective in your own life. The moment you see the pattern, you're no longer completely trapped. You've created space between the trigger and your automatic response. The next step is to understand where the pattern came from, which often means, well, exploring your personal history. This is what Jung meant, when he said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. By understanding the why behind your compulsive repetition, you dissolve the labyrinth's walls and are free to create a new future. The fifth dangerous place is one of the most seductive because it's often rewarded by society. The gilded cage of the persona. The persona, you see, is the social mask we present to the world. The diligent employee, the caring friend, or the perfect parent. Jung saw the persona as necessary for social life. And honestly, it is. The real danger isn't in having a persona, but in over-identifying with it, in mistaking the mask for your real face. When that happens, the persona becomes, well, a gilded cage, trapping your authentic self inside. On the outside, everything looks absolutely perfect. You might be successful, popular, and admired. But on the inside, there's a growing sense of emptiness. A feeling that you're a fraud, You feel exhausted from the constant effort of keeping that mask on, terrified of what might happen if you let it slip. And the most tragic part? Your relationships become hollow. People love your mask, not the real you. Which leads to a profound loneliness, doesn't it? Jung warned that this betrayal of your authentic self eventually leads to a breakdown, as the repressed parts of you can simply no longer be contained. To break free, you must reclaim your authenticity. This begins with a simple yet terrifying question: who am I when no one is watching? The escape happens in small, courageous steps. It might be admitting to a friend that you're not okay. It might mean saying no to something that violates your true feelings, or pursuing a hobby your persona thinks is silly. Jung taught that your true self hasn't disappeared. It's waiting behind the mask, and often speaks through your body and emotions. That burnout is a message. That flash of anger is a message. They are calls to return to your true nature. The journey isn't about destroying your persona, but putting it in its proper place as a flexible tool, not the master of your soul. As it's often said in summarizing his work, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This is the key that unlocks the cage. The sixth dangerous place is the fog of unconscious distractedness. This is a state where a profound disconnect exists between your conscious mind and your unconscious drives. It appears not just as absent-mindedness, but in physical accidents. Now, Jung noted that things like slips of the tongue, forgetting important dates, and even physical clumsiness, they're often not random. They can be messages from an agitated unconscious that's trying to sabotage the conscious mind's plans. So, living in this fog, you might find yourself making uncharacteristic mistakes. You might miss a crucial appointment, break a treasured object, or have a minor accident that just seems like simple bad luck. Jung, though, saw this not as carelessness, but as a symptom of a deeper psychological conflict. He believed that when there's a major tension between what our conscious ego wants and what our deeper self needs, well, the unconscious will actively work to disrupt our plans. For instance, imagine someone about to marry a person their unconscious knows is a bad match. They might suddenly become clumsy or forgetful. And these aren't just coincidences, by the way. No, they're symbolic acts, orchestrated by the psyche to stop them from heading down a dangerous path. That accident, then, is a warning. The Jungian way out of this fog. It's to treat these accidents, not as annoyances, but as vital messages from your deeper self. Instead of cursing your bad luck, ask yourself, what is my psyche trying to tell me? What truth am I refusing to see? You see, this fog is a sign that your conscious mind has become too detached from your instinctual wisdom. To clear it, you have to cultivate a dialogue between your conscious and unconscious minds. Practices like dream journaling, they're invaluable, as dreams often reveal the hidden conflicts causing the disturbances. Pay attention to meaningful coincidences or synchronicities and listen to your gut feelings. By learning to listen to these signals, you stop fighting against yourself and start walking in harmony with your whole being. The seventh dangerous psychological place is the poisoned well of chronic victimhood. This is a toxic emotional environment of subtle control, blame, and dependency. This place often masquerades as love and care, but it suffocates personal growth. The real poison here is the dynamic where one person adopts the role of the perpetual victim, using their perceived helplessness to manipulate and control those around them. If you're in a relationship with someone in the victim role, you'll feel constant guilt and obligation. You're held emotionally hostage. Their needs always seem more urgent, and they control you not with direct demands, but through sighs, hints of suffering, and a story in which they are always wronged. You become their perpetual rescuer, a role that feels noble at first, but, well, it becomes exhausting. Carl Jung, for instance, saw this not as weakness on the part of the victim, but as a shadow strategy for gaining power. Now, on the other hand, you might be the one in the victim role. You may feel that life just happens to you, and that others are to blame for your unhappiness. This stance, while offering temporary comfort, is actually a deep betrayal of your own potential. The Jungian approach to cleaning this poisoned well is to expose the hidden power game. As Jung taught, everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves. Now, if you're trapped as the rescuer, ask yourself, what's your payoff here? Does playing the hero let you avoid your own feelings of helplessness? To break free, you must set firm boundaries and allow the other person to face their own choices. Now, if you're in the victim role, healing lies in taking radical responsibility for your life. You've got to give up that narrative of blame and embrace the liberating truth that you are the author of your own life. This is the essence of individuation, moving from a state of unconscious reaction to one of conscious creation. The final dangerous place is a hazard on the spiritual path itself, the mirage of spiritual fascination. This is the risk of becoming so enchanted by spiritual ideas, powerful archetypes, or charismatic leaders that you just lose touch with the realities of everyday life. An archetype, for instance, is a universal pattern from our collective unconscious, like the hero or the wise old man. These forces, they hold immense psychic energy, and becoming, fascinated or possessed by one, that can be as dangerous as any addiction. When lost in this mirage, you might become obsessed with one particular spiritual system or teacher to the exclusion of everything else. Your ordinary life starts to feel, boring, compared to the sublime world of archetypes. You might even start to identify with an archetype, truly believing you are a modern-day shaman or a chosen one. This leads to what Jung called a dangerous inflation of the ego. It's a loss of humility and a total disconnection from your own human reality. Jung warned this was a truly perilous state, where the ego is swallowed by the vastness of the unconscious. You're no longer an individual navigating the spiritual world, you see. You've become a mouthpiece for an impersonal force. It's the danger of flying too close to the sun. The Jungian safeguard is to maintain a strong, conscious ego, one that can mediate between the inner world of archetypes and the outer world of reality. The goal of the spiritual journey isn't to be possessed by the gods, but to be in conscious dialogue with them. Jung was adamant that true psychological health, it requires having your feet planted firmly on the ground. The antidote to spiritual fascination is conscious integration. When you encounter a powerful archetype, the task isn't to become it, but to relate to it. Instead, ask yourself, how can I integrate this quality, be it courage or wisdom, into my human existence in a balanced way? This requires humility and staying connected to your own humanity. Jung's path is a middle way, one that honors the profound reality of the unconscious without losing its grip on life on Earth. We've journeyed through 8 dangerous psychological places inspired by the work of Carl Jung: the abyss of meaninglessness, the mire of symbiotic relationships, the badlands of shadow possession, the labyrinth of compulsive repetition, the gilded cage of the persona, the fog of unconscious distractedness, the poisoned well of victimhood, and the mirage of spiritual fascination. These aren't chosen destinations, but inner landscapes you can find yourself living in without even realizing it. They're the source of our unspoken suffering, things like anxiety, exhaustion, and that feeling of being lost. But Jung's message, it's ultimately one of deep hope. His work helps us map these territories, not to frighten us, but to empower us. He believed the psyche has a natural drive toward wholeness. These dangerous places aren't dead ends. No, They're signals from the deepest part of you, urging you to wake up, become conscious, and reclaim the parts of yourself you've left behind. The journey out, that's the journey of individuation. It's that lifelong, courageous process of becoming who you were always meant to be. It begins with a single act of awareness, just recognizing the psychic ground you're on. By learning to identify these inner environments, you take back the power to choose. You're no longer a passive victim of fate, but an active participant in the creation of your own soul. The path isn't easy, but it's the only one that leads to a life of genuine meaning, connection, and freedom. So let's turn the lens on you. As you listened, which of these 8 dangerous places felt most familiar? Which of these inner environments do you recognize in your own life, either now or in the past? Sharing your experience can be a powerful act of making the unconscious conscious. Leave a comment below and let us know. Your story might just be the landmark that helps someone else find their way. And if this exploration of the mind's hidden landscapes resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into psychology and personal growth. Your support helps us continue to create content that aims to bring light to the shadows.